The dust-filled air of Willow Creek burned Sophia King's eyes as she trudged along the barren trail leading away from the only home she'd ever known. A small bundle of possessions clutched to her chest like a child she would never bear. The year was 1876, and in a town as small and superstitious as Willow Creek, a woman who couldn't fulfill her God-given duty to bring forth life was worse than useless. She was cursed. Behind her, the whispers of the townsfolk still echoed in her ears. 3 years of marriage to Thomas Bradley had yielded nothing but monthly disappointments and growing contempt. When he'd finally cast her aside for a younger woman from the neighboring town, no one had stood up for her, not even her own parents. Instead, the town council, led by the sanctimonious Reverend Holloway, had given her until sundown to leave, claiming her barrenness would bring bad fortune to their drought-stricken community. Sophia stumbled, her worn boots catching on a rock. At 26, she was neither young enough to start fresh nor old enough to be considered wise. Just a woman alone in a world that had no place for her kind. The sun beat down mercilessly as she continued westward. She had heard talk of a settlement called Promise about 20 miles away, where perhaps she could find work as a seamstress or laundress. Her fingers were nimble, and she'd sewn most of the fine dresses in Willow Creek. It was a skill that might keep her from starving, at least. By midday, the water in her small canteen had grown warm and unpleasant, but she sipped it sparingly nonetheless. The road stretched endlessly before her, and not a single wagon or rider had passed. It was as if the world had conspired to make her isolation complete. The first drops of rain caught her by surprise. The sky had darkened without her notice, and now angry clouds rolled overhead. Within minutes, the gentle patter became a downpour, and Sophia found herself caught in a deluge that quickly turned the dusty trail to mud. She struggled forward, seeking shelter, but there was nothing but open prairie around her. The sound of hoofbeats approaching from behind made her heart race. Travelers could be dangerous for a woman alone, especially one with no protection. She stepped off the trail, hoping whoever it was would pass without incident. Instead, the rider slowed his mount as he approached. "Madam," called a deep voice over the rain, "you shouldn't be out in this weather." Sophia reluctantly looked up. The man sat atop a magnificent chestnut stallion, his broad shoulders draped in a rain-slicked duster. The wide brim of his hat shadowed his face, but she could make out a strong jaw dusted with dark stubble. "I have no choice," she replied, clutching her bundle tighter. The stranger dismounted in one fluid motion, revealing his considerable height. "Name's Zachary Nash. I've got a place about a mile from here. You're welcome to wait out the storm." Thunder cracked overhead, making Sophia jump. She hesitated, weighing her options. Death by the elements or possible danger from this stranger. Neither seemed appealing. "I don't accept charity," she said firmly, even as rain plastered her dress to her shivering form. A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Then you can earn your keep. I could use some help with mending. Got a stack of shirts that look like they've been through a war." Sophia studied him more carefully. His eyes were a striking blue, clear and direct. There was something in them that spoke of honesty, though she'd learned the hard way that men could lie with their eyes as easily as with their tongues. Another crack of thunder decided for her. "Very well, Mr. Nash, but just until the storm passes." He helped her onto his horse, then led the animal by the reins. As they moved away from the road, Sophia wondered if she was making the biggest mistake of her life or if, perhaps, Providence had finally shown her a kindness. Zachary Nash's place turned out to be a surprisingly well-built cabin nestled against a stand of cottonwoods. A small barn stood nearby, and beyond that, a corral where several horses huddled beneath a shelter. It wasn't grand, but it was solid and spoke of care and attention. Once inside, Zachary stoked the fire in the stone hearth while Sophia stood dripping on the plank floor. The cabin's interior was simple but tidy, with a table and chairs, a small kitchen area, and a bed in the corner. Shelves lined one wall, filled with books more than she'd ever seen outside of Reverend Holloway's study. "You can hang your things by the fire to dry," he said, gesturing to a rack near the hearth. "I'll fetch you something dry to wear." Sophia's cheeks flushed. "That won't be necessary. You'll catch your death in those wet clothes," he interrupted, already rummaging through a trunk. He pulled out a shirt and a pair of trousers. "These'll be too big, but they're clean and dry. I'll step outside while you change." True to his word, he left the cabin, closing the door firmly behind him. Sophia stood for a moment in indecision before the chill of her wet clothing compelled her to action. She changed quickly, rolling up the sleeves and pant legs of the borrowed garments, which smelled of soap and sun. When Zachary returned, he carried a bundle of firewood. If her appearance in his clothing surprised him, he didn't show it. Instead, he busied himself preparing a pot of coffee and setting out bread and jerky on the table. "You mentioned you were headed to Promise," he said as he worked. "Not much there these days. The silver mine dried up last year, and most folks moved on." Sophia's heart sank. "Is there any work to be had?" Zachary shrugged. "Some. But it's not a friendly place for a woman alone." He poured coffee into 2 tin cups and handed one to her. "What sends you on the road by yourself, if you don't mind my asking?" She stared into the dark liquid, considering how much to reveal. "I was asked to leave my town." Asked or forced? His perception was unsettling. "Does it matter? The result is the same." He studied her over the rim of his cup. "It matters if you were done an injustice." The simple statement, spoken so matter-of-factly, broke something loose inside her. "My husband divorced me because I couldn't bear him children. The town decided I was bad luck." The words tumbled out bitter and sharp. 3 years I tried. 3 years of prayers and tinctures and advice from every old woman in Willow Creek. But nothing worked. So clearly, I must be cursed." She expected disgust or pity, but Zachary's expression remained unchanged. "Sounds to me like the only curse in Willow Creek is ignorance." A surprised laugh escaped her. "That's a charitable way of putting it." "Nothing charitable about the truth." He leaned back in his chair. "I need someone to help around here. Cooking, mending, keeping things in order. The work's not easy, but the pay is fair, and you'd have a roof over your head. If you're interested." Sophia narrowed her eyes. "What's the catch, Mr. Nash?" "Zach," he corrected. "And the catch is that I'm gone days at a time looking after my cattle. This place gets lonesome. But I promise you'll be treated with respect. And if at any time you want to leave, I won't stop you." Could be a trap, she thought. Yet something told her it wasn't. This man with his direct gaze and straightforward manner didn't seem the type for deception. "I'll stay until I've earned enough to move on," she decided. "And I sleep with a knife under my pillow." That drew a genuine smile from him, transforming his rugged features. "I'd expect nothing less, Mississippi." King. Sophia King. The storm continued through the night, and Zachary insisted Sophia take the bed while he slept on a bedroll near the fire. She lay awake for hours, listening to the rain on the roof and the occasional rumble of thunder, wondering how her life had changed so dramatically in the span of a single day. The next morning dawned clear and bright. Sophia rose early, determined to earn her keep. By the time Zachary woke, she had coffee brewing and biscuits in the oven, using supplies she'd found in his pantry. "You didn't waste any time," he observed, running a hand through sleep-tousled hair. "I believe in paying my debts promptly." She placed a plate of hot biscuits on the table. "And I hope you don't mind, but I've taken inventory of your pantry. You're low on just about everything except coffee and flour. Zachary smiled as he sat down. Been meaning to make a supply run. We can go into Bridgewater tomorrow if the trails are dry enough. The "we" caught her by surprise. In her experience, men didn't include women in such matters. Her husband had always handled business in town, expecting her to remain at home. I'm not sure that's wise, she said carefully. People might talk if they see me with you. He shrugged. Let them talk. You need things of your own, and I could use the company. And so began a new chapter in Sophia's life. The days fell into a rhythm of work and quiet companionship. She mended Zachary's clothes, kept the cabin in order, and cooked meals that were a vast improvement over his basic fare. In return, he treated her with a respect she'd almost forgotten was possible. Bridgewater proved to be a bustling cattle town with a main street lined with businesses. After their initial trip, Sophia insisted on staying behind during subsequent visits, fearful of the curious stares and whispers that followed them. But Zachary always returned with some small gift for her: a ribbon, a book, once even a jar of strawberry preserves that must have cost a small fortune that far from civilization. Why do you do this? She asked him one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the prairie in gold and crimson. Do what? Bring me gifts. Treat me like I'm... She struggled for the word. Worthy? He supplied quietly. When she didn't respond, he continued. My ma used to say that every soul deserves kindness, especially those who've been denied it. Sophia felt tears threatening and blinked them away. Your mother sounds like a wise woman. She was. His voice held a note of old grief. Lost her when I was 16. Pa followed a year later. Been on my own since. I'm sorry. She hesitated, then added. My parents are still alive, but they might as well not be. They stood by and watched as I was cast out. Zachary's hand found hers in the gathering dusk, warm and calloused. Their loss. The simple touch and simpler words warmed something inside her that had been cold for too long. As spring gave way to summer, Sophia found herself looking forward to Zachary's returns from his long days tending cattle. She learned that he ran a modest herd on land he'd bought with savings from years of driving cattle up from Texas. He wasn't wealthy, but he was respected in the area for his fair dealings and hard work. On a sweltering July afternoon, Sophia was hanging laundry when she spotted riders approaching 3 men she didn't recognize. She hurried inside, her heart pounding. Zachary had left at dawn to check on a sick calf and wasn't expected back until evening. She grabbed the rifle he'd taught her to use and positioned herself by the window. The men reined in their horses in front of the cabin, dust billowing around them. Hello, the house, called one, a wiry man with a scarred face. Anyone home? Sophia stayed silent, hoping they would move on. We know someone's there, called another. Saw the washing on the line. Just want some water for our horses, maybe a bit of food if you can spare it. Travelers asking for hospitality was common enough, but something about these men set her nerves on edge. Still, refusing outright could provoke them. My husband will be back any minute, she called through the closed door. He'd be happy to help you then. There was a pause, then laughter. Ain't no husband, lady. Nash rides alone, everyone knows that. Now open up before we get unfriendly. Fear gripped her, but so did anger. She'd been pushed around enough in her life. I have a rifle trained on you right now, she called, her voice steadier than she felt. Take water from the trough for your horses and be on your way. More laughter, followed by muttered conversation she couldn't make out. Then the scarred man spoke again. Have it your way for now, but we'll be back when Nash returns. Got business with him. They watered their horses as she'd suggested, but took their time about it, making a show of looking over the property. When they finally rode away, Sophia sagged against the wall, trembling with delayed reaction. When Zachary returned and she told him about the visitors, his face darkened. "Buchanan's men," he said grimly. "Chester Buchanan owns the big spread east of here. Been trying to push me out for years." "Why?" "My land controls access to the best water for miles around. He wants it." Zachary checked the rifle she'd left by the door. "You did right standing your ground. But tomorrow, I'm taking you into Bridgewater. You'll be safer there until this blows over." "I'm not leaving," Sophia said firmly. "This is my home too now." The words surprised them both. Zachary looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Sophia, no, I won't be run off again. Not by Buchanan, not by anyone." Something shifted in Zachary's eyes, a softening that made her breath catch. "All right," he said finally, "but we'll need to be careful." The threat from Buchanan hung over them in the days that followed. Zachary took to carrying his revolver even when working close to home, and he taught Sophia more about using the rifle. They established signals and plans for various scenarios, working together with a synchronicity that felt as natural as breathing. One evening, as they sat side by side cleaning their weapons, Sophia found herself studying Zachary's profile in the lamplight. The strong line of his jaw, the small scar above his right eyebrow, the way his hair curled slightly at the nape of his neck. Somewhere along the way, this man had become more than her employer, more than her protector. He had become essential. As if sensing her gaze, he looked up, catching her in the act of staring. Rather than looking away in embarrassment, she held his gaze, allowing him to see what she was only just admitting to herself. "Sophia," he said, her name a question and an answer all at once. She set aside the rifle and moved closer to him. "I never thought I would feel this way again. I never thought anyone would want me, knowing what I am." "And what are you?" His voice was low, his eyes never leaving hers. "Barren. Broken." The words hurt less than they once had, but still carried the weight of old pain. Zachary set down his revolver and took her hands in his. "You are neither of those things. You're the strongest, most remarkable woman I've ever known. But I can never give you children." The admission felt like tearing open a wound. "Do you think that matters to me?" He cupped her face gently. "Sophia, I fell in love with you, not with some idea of what you could give me." The word love hung in the air between them, precious and terrifying. "You can't mean that," she whispered. In answer, he kissed her, a gentle meeting of lips that deepened as she responded. Years of loneliness and rejection melted away under his touch, replaced by a warmth that spread through her entire being. When they finally parted, both breathless, Zachary pressed his forehead to hers. "I've never been more certain of anything in my life." That night, Sophia gave herself fully to Zachary, discovering a passion and tenderness she'd never known existed. In his arms, she wasn't lacking or inadequate, she was cherished, desired, complete. The next morning, she woke to find him watching her, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Marry me," he said simply. Joy bubbled up inside her, but caution tempered it. "Are you sure? Really sure? More sure than I've ever been." He traced the curve of her cheek with his finger. "Say yes, Sophia. Be my wife not because you need a place to stay or protection, but because we belong together." Tears filled her eyes, but they were tears of happiness. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will marry you, Zachary Nash." Their plans for a quiet wedding in Bridgewater were interrupted 2 days later when Chester Buchanan himself rode onto their property, accompanied by 6 men including the 3 who had come before. Zachary met them in the yard, his stance relaxed but alert. Sophia watched from the doorway, rifle in hand. "Nash," Buchanan greeted, a heavy-set man with cold eyes. "I hear congratulations are in order." My boys tell me you've taken a wife. Your boys should mind their own business, Zachary replied evenly. What do you want, Buchanan? Same as always. Your land. But now I'm prepared to be generous. He nodded toward Sophia. Heard some interesting tales about your woman. They say she was run out of Willow Creek for being barren. Cursed, they called her. Sophia felt the blood drain from her face. How had he learned this? Zachary's expression didn't change, but she saw his hand drift closer to his revolver. I suggest you leave now while you still can. Buchanan smirked. I'm offering you a way out, Nash. Sell to me, take your cursed woman, and go somewhere people don't know what she is. Or stay, and watch as every rancher in the territory turns against you. No one wants bad luck spreading to their herds. There's no such thing as curses, Zachary said coldly. Only men who use superstition to get what they want. We'll see about that. Buchanan turned his horse. Think on my offer. I'll be back in a week for your answer. After they left, Zachary came to Sophia, who stood trembling with rage and humiliation. How did they find out? She asked. Doesn't matter. What matters is what we do now. He took her hands in his. I meant what I said. I don't believe in curses. But others will. She pulled away, pacing the small confines of the cabin. It will be Willow Creek all over again. The whispers, the stares, the blame for every misfortune. No, Zachary said firmly. It won't be the same because I'm not your ex-husband, and these aren't the same people. We'll face this together. His confidence steadied her, but she knew the power of superstition in frontier communities. If enough people believed she brought bad luck, it wouldn't matter what Zachary thought. True to Buchanan's threat, the whispers began. When they rode into Bridgewater to speak with the preacher about their wedding, people who had once been friendly now avoided their eyes. The general store owner, who had always chatted amiably with Zachary, was brusque and hurried them out. It's working, Sophia said bitterly as they rode home. Buchanan's poison is spreading. Zachary reached across to take her hand. Then we'll find the antidote. The antidote, as it turned out, came in an unexpected form. While collecting eggs the next morning, Sophia discovered a young girl hiding in their barn. No more than 12, with tangled dark hair and wary eyes, she looked half-starved and terrified. It's all right, Sophia said gently, setting down her basket. I won't hurt you. Are you hungry? The girl nodded cautiously. Come to the house. I'll fix you something to eat. Zachary was out checking the herd, so Sophia had the girl who eventually said her name was Lily seated at the table with a plate of eggs and biscuits when he returned. Found her in the barn, Sophia explained. She won't say where she's from or how she got here. Zachary knelt beside the child's chair. You're safe here, Lily. No one's going to make you leave if you don't want to go. Something in his gentle tone broke through the girl's reserve. My pa died, she whispered. Ma remarried, but her new husband. She trailed off, her eyes filling with tears. I ran away 3 days ago. Sophia and Zachary exchanged a look of understanding. Without discussion, they agreed that Lily would stay with them, at least until they could determine if she had any other family who would care for her properly. The girl's presence changed something in their household. Sophia, who had always believed her inability to have children made her somehow less of a woman, found herself naturally stepping into a maternal role. And watching Zachary teach Lily to ride or patiently explain how to milk a cow filled her with a love so profound it sometimes took her breath away. Word of the orphaned girl staying with them spread through Bridgewater, countering some of Buchanan's rumors. It was harder to believe a woman was cursed when she was caring for a child who was clearly thriving. When Buchanan returned a week later, he found not just Zachary waiting for him, but Sophia and Lily as well, along with Sheriff Miller from Bridgewater and several neighboring ranchers who had decided that Buchanan's tactics crossed a line. This stops now, Sheriff Miller told Buchanan. Nash and his family aren't going anywhere, and if I hear any more talk of curses or threats, you'll be the one leaving in chains. Buchanan's face darkened with anger, but with the odds clearly against him, he had little choice but to retreat, at least for the moment. That evening, as Lily slept and Sophia and Zachary sat on the porch watching stars appear in the darkening sky, he took her hand. I want us to be a real family, you, me, and Lily, if she'll have us. Sophia leaned against his shoulder. Do you think she would? Want us to adopt her? I think she's already chosen us, just as we've chosen her. He kissed the top of her head. And maybe someday we might take in more children who need homes. There are always orphans in need of love. The idea of filling their home with children who needed them, of creating a family bound not by blood but by choice and love, filled Sophia with a joy she had never imagined possible. They were married 2 weeks later in a small ceremony in Bridgewater. To Sophia's surprise, several townspeople attended, including the general store owner who apologized for his earlier behavior. Lily stood beside them, beaming with happiness in a new dress Sophia had made for the occasion. As summer turned to fall and then to winter, news reached them that Thomas Bradley, Sophia's ex-husband, had left his new wife after she too failed to conceive. The irony might have been satisfying had Sophia not been so content with her own life. Instead, she felt only pity for the woman who would now face the same prejudice she had once endured. By spring, their family had grown again with the addition of twin boys, aged 8, whose parents had died of fever. The cabin, once so sparse and utilitarian, now hummed with life and laughter. Zachary added rooms, and Sophia planted a garden that flourished under her care. On the anniversary of the day Zachary had found her on the road, Sophia sat with him on the porch, watching their children play in the yard. Lily, now showing signs of becoming a beautiful young woman, was teaching the twins how to throw a lasso, with limited success. I never thought I could be this happy, Sophia said softly. That day on the road, I thought my life was over. Zachary squeezed her hand. Instead, it was just beginning. She turned to face him, this man who had seen past her supposed flaws to the woman beneath. I love you, Zachary Nash. Thank you for showing me what real love is. His kiss was as tender as the first they had shared. And I love you, Sophia Nash, every day more than the last. As the sun set over their land, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold, Sophia thought of the journey that had brought her here, the pain and rejection that had seemed so insurmountable. From exile to belonging, from shame to pride, from emptiness to a fullness of heart she had never imagined possible. The town that had banished her had been wrong about so many things, but most of all they had been wrong about her. She wasn't cursed. She was blessed beyond measure.